you want me to say that when we're in public, or do you want me to say it now?
Maybe both, because it's,
The only change, I believe, is under Park and Rec. There was, there is some money coming out of the general fund for the surfacing for the Jeff Moran Fields playground. That's the only, that's the
I'm looking at
only,
this agenda instead of my own.
yeah, that's the only other change.
Okay. All right, so let me just, I would like to change that on mine first. So
Yep.
that would be under paragraph.
I just have to tell, my ultimate.
Board of Public Works meeting to order on September 26, 2019. Diane, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Donches,
Here?
Commissioner Ackerman,
Here.
Commissioner Pappas,
Here.
Commissioner Moriarty,
Here.
Commissioner Teese.
Present. Is there a motion regarding the agenda?
Move to approve the Axelrod copy of the amended agenda.
Comments, questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Oh,
Is there a minute, is there,
can I have one question?
yes. of
Just,
course.
I mean, just so that we remember to, I think that there was one change, so we did have a grievance taken out, but I think there was one funding change, just because it's not the exact same that was listed under Parks and Recreation.
Correct.
And so the funding source, the sum of 109,790.
Correct. So, and the superintendent can probably speak to that after, but there is some funding that is now coming out of the general fund instead of all coming from the donations from the Moran Foundation.
Okay, because I don't
Correct.
see that. Is it on, I don't see it on the amended agenda, that's part of why I'm so confused.
Yeah, it's on there. It's 8, Roman numeral 8A. Kind of in the middle.
Oh, so it's after, no, that's under solid waste, not Parks and Recreation.
Yeah, but number 8, right above it.
So on the very bottom, Commissioner Pappas, where it says Jeff Moran Memorial Funds and Fund, and then next what it says General Account Classification 55 Other Services, that was added.
Okay, so the whole 109,790 is that all, is that part coming from
Remain the same, right?
from that fund?
So that didn't change. I'm not sure, Superintendent, do you want to
Just
come and
so
explain
that-
exactly what's coming out of the general fund and what's coming out of
So,
the?
yeah.
Yeah.
Nick Caggiano, Park and Rec Superintendent. When we get to that item, $100,000 will be coming out of the Jeff Moran Fund, and the $9,790 will be coming out of the operating budget.
Okay, and that's like the general fund is in Parks and Rec General Fund, or?
Yeah, under the playground line.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so is there a motion regarding the minutes of the meeting of August 15th?
I'll move to approve the minutes of the Board of Public Works meeting of August 15th, 2019.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Is there a motion regarding the August 22nd minutes?
I'll
Move,
Go ahead.
move to approve the minutes of the Board of Public Works meeting of August 22, 2019.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Now we have public comment. Is there anyone from the public who would like to address the Board of Public Works? Apparently not. We now have the presentation regarding the East Hollis Street Bridge Street project. And I believe Ms. Chismus is going to lead off.
Hi, good evening. My name's Julie Chismus. I'm the Transportation and Long Range Planner with the Community Development Division. I'm here this evening with Brian Coburn from McFarland Johnson. He's a project manager on our East Hollis Bridge Street intersection improvement project that we presented to you last October, and we're here to give you an update on that project. So I will turn it over to Brian. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. So just a quick look at what we'll be talking about. Again, as Julie said, we'll give you an update of what we've been up to over the last year, which has culminated in a revised preferred alternative for the intersection improvement. Yes.
Just to the chair.
Yes. Commissioner Pappas.
So so we have a private manager here. Just if you don't mind saying again your name and your position.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
So just, would you mind repeating your name and the name of your firm
Okay.
In your position. Thank you.
and your
My
title?
name is Brian Colburn. I work for the engineering firm McFarland Johnson, and I'm the project manager for this project.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And yeah, as I go through this, feel free to ask questions as we go. Again, mainly here to show a revised alternative for the intersection improvement project, and then just outline what we'll be doing moving forward and any final questions you may have. Just to remind people of the scope of the project, it's the intersection of East Hall Street and Bridge Street, just west of the Merrimack River. Project limits extend from the bridges over the river west to about C Street, and that's outlined here in a red line on this aerial image. The scope of the project was not only to look at the cars that use this facility, but also looked at other modes of transportation, such as pedestrians and bicyclists, making sure we maintain the current traffic capacity, but understanding that a lot of the traffic that goes through here is regional in nature, and this project, the scope of this project, is not really going to address some of the larger transportation congestion in the area. And we did build on two previous studies that had looked at this intersection before we started. The project is funded through a grant from New Hampshire Department of Transportation, so we have to follow a specific process as we go through. We are currently in the first step, which is called the engineering study phase. This stage concludes with the selection of a recommended preferred alternative by the community. DOT concurs with that, and then they authorize us to move into preliminary design, then final design, and then finally construction. So again, just a recap on the timeline, we have a steering committee that we had met with quite a bit back in 2018. At the end of August, they recommended what we called Alternative 3 at the time as the preferred alternative. We met with the Committee of Infrastructure and the Board of Public Works late in October of last year. Both supported that recommendation. We submitted our report to the Department of Transportation at the end of November, received their comments middle of February. It took a little bit to get a meeting to go over some of those comments with them, so we met with them in early May. One of their main comments was a suggestion to do some additional traffic analysis on our alternatives using a different style of model, which is what we did. The results of that actually showed that the alternatives we were proposing did not operate as well as our original analysis had shown. Specifically, the morning traffic queuing into Hudson would be longer than it is today, backing up into their signalized system, which we determined was not acceptable. So we looked at some new alternatives, both modifications to what we had shown before and a new one, and came back to the steering committee in the middle of September. They support the new alternative, and we presented to the Committee of Infrastructure last night. The steering committee members are outlined here, a fair amount of representation from the city of Nashua, both from a staff perspective, alderman, and a resident. We did have the property manager for SMC Management Corporation. They are the managing company for Riverfront Landing, the housing development just north of the intersection. And we did have a representative from Town of Hudson, their planner, who coincidentally also lives at Riverfront Landing. So he was wearing two hats in the meeting.
And what's his name?
Brian Groth.
Okay.
So just to show what the images of the alternatives we looked at last year, this was alternative 1. We referred to this as the X configuration. This looks very familiar because basically this is what's out there today. Doesn't really change how Riverfront Landing gets access to East Hall Street. If you're coming down East Hall Street and you want to get into Riverfront Landing right now, you have to use D Street. So there's quite a bit more traffic due to the development on D Street. And doesn't really offer any opportunity for, say, a future road to the south into what we call the Crown Street area for potential revitalization and connection to the train station. Alternative 2 was, we called this the O. So we had previously looked at if a roundabout could work here, and it can't. But this is a kind of a twist on the roundabout where we put signals at every intersection. This operated fairly well, but didn't get a lot of support from the community just due to the circular nature everybody's driving on, and some other aspects. But this would accommodate all the movements into Riverfront Landing and would accommodate a future Crown Street connector road to the south. Alternative 3 is, we call this the H. This was the recommended, excuse me, the recommended alternative last year. Our analysis at the time showed it operated pretty much similar to the conditions today. Subsequent analysis showed again that queue back into Hudson over the bridges was getting quite a bit longer than it would be today and would cause issues in Hudson. So we went back and took another look at what would it take to get this style of alternative to work. And the change here is that the left turn lane, if you can see my mouse here, the left turn lane we had from Bridge Street into Riverfront Landing, we had to remove that lane and its subsequent phase in the signal to get the operations to work. So this would require people who are coming up Bridge Street to continue to use this left across from D Street and the temporary access easement that the owner has across this property. So Riverfront Landing was not a fan of this change. They're really looking to get out of that temporary easement situation and having traffic needing to take this left turn across from D Street. So we went back and looked at some different things and came up with what our fourth alternative. Don't really have a name for this one. Some people called it the Ghostbuster symbol. But essentially what we do is it's similar to alternative 2, except we have a one-way road through the center of that middle green space that will take the traffic from Bridge Street through the signal, across the green space, and onto East Hall Street. And by making that change, the new traffic analysis and the old method as well both show that the traffic queuing here will be essentially the same as what you would exhibit if you didn't do anything. The one exception is coming out of the city on East Hall Street. Now this movement has no delay because they just can go straight onto the bridge. So any delay they're experiencing is really a result of traffic queuing back from the signal in Hudson.
Can you, I don't know if there's a way you can do a split screen, because this looks like it looks like it's an update from one of the alternatives. Is there any way you can do a split screen between the two just to show the differences?
To compare it to alternative 2?
Yes.
I can try, yep.
I know I wouldn't be able to do it, but.
You mean alternative 3?
Well, whichever one that you, I can't recall whichever one that you had kind of done this a hybrid off of. I thought it was D, but.
Let's see if I can.
played.
You did it. I couldn't do it. I think that's the wrong one.
So that is how
May have spoken.
the new alternative 4 here is on the right, and the old alternative 2 is on the left.
Okay, so that was, so the alternative 4 was the hybrid of the alternative 2? Okay,
Yes. Yep.
thanks.
Mr. Chair?
Yes. Commissioner
But I
Ackerman.
thought that the recommendation from the community and all the upfront due diligence that was that alternative 3 was the recommendation from the community, is that correct? So you had gone back now to...
So, yeah, we had a public hearing. Remember, it was a very hot day in 2018, so I want to say it was early August. We had a public hearing and presented the 3 alternatives.
Correct.
I don't know that we got an overwhelming consensus. There was pretty much a split between alternative 1 and alternative 3. I'd say the people that voted for alternative 1 were solely focused on traffic operations, and didn't factor in the other goals that the project was trying to attain with new access and safety.
Did the city engineering department chime in on this or not?
Yes, the deputy city engineer sits on the steering committee. So he was at the steering committee presentation.
For the presentation?
So I think if I can just run through, I've got some slides here that show how it operates. I think that might, if you're confused looking at it, because the plan view can be a bit daunting. This slide just proves we didn't come up with this idea on our own. This is an intersection down in Massachusetts. This style exists in both, we found it in Revere and in Dedham. Again, it's a somewhat circular pattern on the outside with many of the entrances controlled by signals. And then if they have a major through movement, they run it right through the center. So it is a proven intersection layout. These do work down in Massachusetts. So just to show how some of the movements occur, the red line here is how traffic coming out of Hudson would cut across the center to get onto East Hall Street. The blue line is East Hall Street heading into Hudson. That's very similar to what exists today. Again, the red line is coming out of Hudson, heading down Bridge Street, very similar to today. The blue line is if you're on Bridge Street and you want to head into Hudson. So this first intersection here, this is actually a yield sign, because you'll see what traffic is in this slip lane here, but it's not very much. So most of the time, Bridge Street traffic will be able to enter this fairly freely and will only have to navigate the one signal. And that's really why this performs better than the alternative 3 we had, is both of the movements that currently make the X, we were putting through 2 signals. In this case, coming out of Hudson, heading onto East Hall Street, you still have to go to 2 signals, but there's simpler signals than what we had shown. They'll be coordinated. And then for Bridge Street coming out of the city, it's only going through 1 signal. This was the left turn movement from Bridge Street onto Riverfront Landing. Both the representative from Riverfront Landing and the town planner who lives here agreed this didn't seem too complicated for them. I mean, we will have to pay attention to signage to make sure everybody's getting in the right lane, but that's how the left turn movement goes into Riverfront Landing, so we're able to get rid of the signal, the temporary signal that currently exists at D Street under this alternative. These are 2 movements that don't exist today. So coming out of Riverfront Landing, either trying to get into Hudson or heading west on East Hall Street. They would come out, get in that slip lane, and then make their movement at that point. Again, this is another movement that doesn't exist today, but people coming from Hudson wanting to get into the Crown Street area, they'll be able to use this intersection to do that. I should point out, and it's somewhat tough to see on this image, there's some dashed blue lines here. in this area that represent where a future Crown Street connection would be able to tie into this.
Can I ask
some-
a corner
yes.
Before you leave, what's the approximate land area, square footage or acreage of the green area in the middle of the? or
In the middle,
the
yeah,
ghost- The ghost, the
it's-
Ghostbusters
it's a-
symbol.
Yeah, it's about an acre of green space in the middle. I think one of the positive attributes of alternative 3 was gave a lot of green space adjacent to East Street, which the community really liked. This alternative does not do that. With the amount of traffic that will be circulating around the interior green spaces, the opportunity to have community access to that, we don't really recommend. We see that the opportunity for that space is as a gateway feature into the city, make it aesthetically, through street trees. The idea of putting some public art that's generated can be put on display out here. And then using this green space adjacent to East Street, focusing on a nice buffer between the green space and the street to make it feel as much a part of the community and less part of the intersection. The city resident that was on the steering committee did mention that they would really like to see access to the path along the levee as part of this project, as a community amenity. So we are exploring that. We have a meeting with the Army Corps of Engineers next week. They're up for their inspection of the levee, so we're going to meet them down there and go over our ideas and how we think we could do it and kind of what the process is to make that happen. So we are, the community has expressed the desire to get something out of this project to enhance their neighborhood. So that's the avenue we're headed down now.
So you took into consideration the future Crown Street. Did you, in coming up with this alternative, did you at all come up with some, with considering some of the apartments that are going to be, additional apartments being put in on Temple and at Henry Hanger?
Yes. So when we did our traffic projections early in 2018, so whatever was planned at that point, we built into our model.
I don't think those were planned at that point.
And we also had contacted the Regional Planning Commission to get their sense of what was potential for redevelopment. And then we also grew all the traffic by 1% through our analysis period. So the traffic we're looking at is 15% higher than what's out there today. So that 1% growth accounts for, I think, a lot of the development.
Okay.
We were really focused on making sure we had a good handle on what a Crown Street redevelopment, because that would have been more than what a 15% growth would have been.
Well, I don't think that those developments were on Crown Street. Were those, I don't think those developments were in planning then. Nobody's, I don't know.
So what's the question? What's the question?
Well, the Henry Hanger and the Temple Street plans weren't there before this alternative came up, is that correct?
Now, those aren't on Crown Street, but.
I know they're not on Crown Street, I'm saying, I asked if they took into consideration the development on Temple Street and on, and at Henry Hanger.
Now, in the context of the planning board's review of those projects, there were the opinions of a couple different, our traffic engineer as well as the engineer for the potential developer who said that the effect on traffic volumes would be not significant. You wouldn't notice the difference.
And how many, between the two developments, how many units are going in?
About 250.
And that wouldn't have a significant.
Well, because there is, 11,000 cars go out a day, say, on East Hollis Street. And if you add to that, 30 trips in a peak hour, or 50 trips in a peak hour, it's, it's not a material difference.
Yeah, that's,
You see that, on Franklin Street, right? I mean, the idea was, oh my God, there's 200 apartments there. That intersection at Main is going to be backed up forever. That was a concern.
How many units are there?
209. And behind that, there's 100 at Cotton Mill, and there's 100 at Cotton Mill. So, but now that it's open, I mean, people come out at different times, people come out and in. It's not like a workplace where every car leaves at the same time. So
Are all those units filled?
all those units are filled. And it doesn't seem to have created any particular problem, and you don't really notice much difference. So I think, that's just an example of the kind of point that Wayne Husband and the developer's traffic engineer were making.
Thank you.
Yeah, just one, thank you.
Excuse me.
No,
Commissioner Moriarty.
I was just wondering, comparing the present situation with your new alternative 4, what kind of improvement would we see with traffic flow? Do you have a estimated percentage of improvement?
so like alternative 3 we presented before, this is not anticipated to improve traffic flow. This project will add access and maintain the current traffic flow,
Which isn't great.
which is not great.
Right.
Yep. So some observations we've made is, in the pro column, it's similar traffic capacity to the existing. As we've shown, it's a proven layout, and some of our crosswalk lengths are actually shorter than what we had shown in alternative 3. Cons are, and this is really any alternative but alternative 1. There's going to be more delay for some vehicles. So there's vehicles that come out of Hudson going down Bridge Street now that have no delay. There are cars that coming out of East Hall Street heading into Hudson that have no delay. By adding those access points, they're going to see some delay now where they didn't before. So what we've done is we've managed those, looked at these peak hours of traffic and managed the back of the backup such that it's predicted to be the same as it is today. So that's pretty much it. Again, we're here now presenting to both you and the Committee of Infrastructure. I think what we're looking for is concurrence that alternative 4 is the right way to move forward. With the community's support, we then submit our report back to New Hampshire DOT, and we would expect to get approval to move into preliminary design early in 2020. Any questions?
Commissioner Moriarty.
I do have another question. You did mention that the cost of the engineering study was through the DOT.
Yep.
Is the entire project funded by the state?
Yes. This is, so both engineering now and construction is 100% funded by New Hampshire DOT with no match. Thank you. City.
Commissioner Ackerman.
Could you put the picture back up on proposal 4 or alternative 4? So with this particular alternative, we remove the light from the corner of D and Bridge Street, is that correct?
Yes.
What's the benefit to traffic flow as a result of that? Anything?
I mean, yeah, there'd be a benefit there. I think, it's tough to model the coordination there now, but yeah, obviously heading into the city, there'd be one less signal to go through.
And in this model, then, people that would want to take a left into that easement that you referred to could do so, but have no traffic light, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So that could potentially slow down traffic if somebody was sitting there. Is it a one-lane spot?
Yeah, this image is a little bit outdated. I didn't know if my other one was fixed. Yeah, so this version is actually, I forgot to correct the second version of the slide. So the version we have now of alternative 4, we're keeping that left turn lane there. So if somebody wants to make that left turn into that easement, they won't be blocking the lane.
Which left turn?
We're talking about across from D Street. So if you're coming
Oh,
on
yeah.
Bridge Street here and you want to make this left
Yeah,
into that spot, there's currently a left turn lane there now. We're going to keep that left turn lane.
okay.
We're just getting rid of the traffic signal portion of it.
And people coming out of that spot, which is, they hit the light today, and we'd probably prefer that, is it a right turn only from there, or can they also take a left-hand turn but not have a traffic light?
We would have them be allowed to make the left turn.
We would.
Just, yep.
Okay. And going back to Commissioner Moriarty's question about the funding, I thought that through the public session that occurred a year ago, that some of the green space was actually going to have to come from the funding of the city of Nashua. Was I mistaken?
Well, we had, no, so everything we showed last year would be funded through the project. Now, we had talked about the green space providing opportunity to do things like a community garden, dog park, playground. Those type of amenities are not eligible for funding through the program. So that exists the same here. We can pay for trees, streetlights, that sort of infrastructure and green space improvement, but anything beyond that, the city would have to program.
Just one last question, if I may. I realize that the scope of this project is on this side of the bridge and has nothing to do with over there. In a perfect world, if money was no object, how might we improve people leaving the city of Nashua going through Hudson? What, is there something that, from your vantage point, and from your analysis that you've done, that could have been done, or?
That's
It's a loaded question.
That's probably a 50-minute presentation on that. I mean, there's a lot of traffic going through this area, both on the Nashua side and the Hudson side, and a lot of movements that cross each other. So, I mean, there's a myriad of things you could do from that range from just widening roads and taking right-of-way to do that, to building a new bridge somewhere to reduce the traffic. And there's a whole host of options in between. So if money were no object, I'd say a new bridge somewhere else.
All right, any other questions, comments? Alderman Jettie.
So I have several of the, oops, sorry. Okay. So will pedestrians have any access to that green area?
We're the green area in the center.
Yes.
We are currently not showing crosswalks to that area right now. We're envisioning people that want to get from one side of this intersection to the other is using a crosswalk on the west side of the intersection. We could provide sidewalks to the center if the city wants to. Couple drawbacks to that is if a pedestrian pushes the button on on especially the signal coming out of Hudson, that will add delay to the vehicles.
Delays.
And then we would have to manage that space in the middle because you don't want to create a safety concern by letting people there.
Also, we just, it has nothing to do with your project, but we just gave up a parcel of land further down Bridge Street, which had been intended to be used for some undetermined recreational purpose for that neighborhood. And now, in that discussion, there was the comment made that, well, part of that proposal, I know you don't know you may not know anything about this, but part of that proposal is the developer is paying the city some money. And the discussion was, well, some of that money could be used in what we thought was going to be some open space in the previous alternative. And now the neighborhood is not only losing that area on Bridge Street, they're now losing this open space that was going to be provided in the other alternative. And I'm wondering, I'm kind of asking an open question as to whether or not there's been an opportunity for the public to weigh in on this alternative. I don't think, other than your steering committee, I don't think there's been a public hearing on this new proposal yet.
There's not, no. So what we envision is, as we move forward, we'll continue to engage the community. I think specifically about what to do with the green space we have and getting their comments about, do they want access to that center? What can we do to make access to the river better for them? And what do they really want to see done with the green space along East Street? So we do plan to go back to the public at least one, maybe two more times through the design process. But you are correct, we have not presented this new alternative in a public forum other than this meeting and the meeting last night.
Okay. And also, you might recall that I was at the Infrastructure Committee meeting last night. When you talk about if money were no object, we talked about whether or not we could think about, instead of trying to concentrate this exchange of people coming across the river on Bridge Street and trying to cross over to get onto East Hollis Street and vice versa, whether or not, because it's such a tight area, tight space, it kind of is ripe for what the problem is now, and that is traffic backing up, either people coming from Hudson backing up into the Hudson signal area, or when people are going from Nashua into Hudson, the traffic backing up across the railroad tracks as far as Alls Street, and whether or not looking at this with a larger, instead of crossing the traffic in this little limited area, kind of looking at it, taking an extended view, having the traffic going down Bridge Street, maybe making Bridge Street one way to Amory Street and having them cross over Amory onto Temple Street and over to East Hollis Street, and coming the other way, turning on Amory over to Temple and East Hollis to make it kind of a much larger group. You could accommodate a lot more cars. When cars back up, there'd be a lot more space for them to back up and not block intersections. But the answer I was given last night was the state is paying for this project and it's limited to this little area. It's too bad that we can't come up with a way of looking at a more, I don't know if global, not global, but at least a larger area.
Yeah, and I'll just add, and I think I mentioned this last night. I believe the East Hall Street corridor study did look at that option and did not look upon it favorably at that point. I don't remember the reasons why. I just remember it was not picked over an improvement at this location.
Commissioner Ackerman.
Thank you. Just two more questions. In proximity to where we have the traffic flow in the middle of the screen there, whereabouts are those levees that you referred to that was it the residents of Renaissance wanted access to, or the community?
No, the community member that expressed interest in getting to the levee lives on East Street.
That's fine.
And, yep.
But where's the levee?
And the levee is, the top of it's grass, so it's hard to distinguish, but, so there's a bench on the levee, so it comes up from the river, it flattens for a bit, and then it comes up some more to the top. So that flat bench is this worn path that people appear to be using to walk along the river.
Right, and I'm not
And then
sure-
the levee comes up higher. So the top of the levee is probably in here.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you've done any initial analysis from that input, but do you envision any crosswalks as a result of having access to that area?
No. So there'll be crosswalks across here and here, which would give the whole area the ability to get to this southern side of the intersection, and that's where the path come down from the side of the road down to the path on the levee.
And just, again, one last question, I promise. The access to the railroad station on this lower quadrant of the picture in the future, is that an existing road now? I can't really make it out, or is that, we're gonna,
That's a concept for a future roadway. The location is sitting on top of an easement the city owns for, I believe, a sewer line.
okay, but is there a road there, or would we envision like eminent domain taking property to have access to that area?
Well, it's an easement you own. I'm not sure exactly the process to reuse it for a roadway instead of sewer. So there aren't any buildings in the way
There are no buildings, okay, fair
of
enough.
that. There are businesses using that land for purpose, so there'd be some negotiation, I'm sure. But
All right, thank you.
Any other discussion, questions? So now what are you looking for now?
The Committee of Infrastructure just kind of gives us a head nod. I believe last time we were here, your board actually took a vote. Really, we're just looking for just consensus that we're headed in the right direction. That Alternative 4 is the preferred.
Is there a motion regarding alternative 4?
Move to endorse alternative 4 to whatever appropriate board is necessary.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay?
Motion passes. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Do you need this back up there?
Yeah, actually, well, you don't have a presentation,
Is
so I'll
Casella
take.
going to use that?
No,
No.
they're gonna, they just have a handout that they gave us.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Next item is our friends from Casella.
No.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We're very interested in the
Yeah, it's a big
subject of
topic.
recycling.
First off, my name's Bob Capadona. I serve as Vice President of Recycling for Casella Waste.
We're currently the service provider for the recyclables coming out of the city. You should all have a packet in front of you. It's a short, quick, 12-page slide. In the news has been recycling for the last year globally, and a lot of talk about it. So I've given this presentation. This is an abbreviated presentation, as you could imagine, the last year or so. The most value here is probably Q&A. So at any time as I go through this, welcome to stop me, or we can usual Q&A afterwards. So I'll go pretty quickly here. If you flip over to slide 2, it's just an overview of Casella. Those are the two brothers, John Casella and Doug Casella, that started the company in 1975, ironically, with a recycling truck. We're a vertically integrated company, landfill, recycling, organics, and a publicly traded company. If you flip to slide 3, the Casella Recycling arm, that's my world. We're a company that's primarily in the Northeast, New England, New York, some assets in Pennsylvania. We have 17 recycling operations. 6 of them are sophisticated single stream, but we also process commercial operations, and we have industrial operations, and we also have a brokerage arm that deals directly with our paper mills and plastic mills. Of course, we're pretty large, over 800,000 tons per year as a company in the traditional recyclables. In the 2 primary MRFs, New Hampshire doesn't have a primary facility, a single stream facility for processing. And when I say single stream, that is materials that are picked up in one bin. In the old days, I've been in the industry 30 years, recyclables at the curb were picked up by individually, source separated. 5 different items in 5 different compartments of the truck coming, and then it evolved into what we call dual stream, which was fiber in one bucket, if you remember, and then containers in another bucket, and then the truck had 2 compartments. Now in the early 2000s, it shifted to single stream for convenience for the homeowner, because I hate to say it, we're lazy as a society, and we don't like the 10 different buckets to sort out and 10 different items, so we threw it all in one bin. And we'll get to that, but when we threw it all in one bin as an industry, we didn't do a very good job educating folks of what goes in that bin. So when we threw it in the bin, we threw everything in the bin, right? So contamination is where I'm going with that, so we'll talk a little bit about that from a contamination standpoint. That last bullet point, well, I mean, again, the Auburn and Boston facility, 2 very large facilities in Massachusetts. The city of Nashua's material runs down to the Boston MRF, is the 4th largest recycling facility in the country. The big one here, that last bullet point, we process 30,000 tons out of the state of New Hampshire, of which 4,500 of is the city of Nashua's. Again, that's a big piece, and we had a presentation last week in front of the state committee. The state had put together a committee to kind of study what's going on with regards to waste and recycling. And one of the things that we saw is the transportation costs, and we'll talk about that a little bit of how increased costs in recycling, but transportation costs to export recyclables down to Massachusetts could be anywhere from $15 a ton to $25 a ton, which is added on to the processing costs. So that's a little bit of a dilemma in New Hampshire when you're talking about increased costs for recycling. National Sword, if you haven't heard, it's a National Sword initiative that came out of China. It started in March in 2018, but actually came about in the fall of 2017. And it was an initiative by China to kind of clean up some of the imports of trash that's coming into their country. And the 2 biggest pieces was a ban of 24 items of recyclable items, most notably the mixed paper grade, which is 40% of the residential stream. Again, I'll say that the mixed paper grade, 40% of the residential stream by weight is that particular grade that they banned from China. And then on top of that, they put in existence of purity specifications that any baled material, recycled material, had to be less than 0.5% prohibitives, contamination, or what they called it carried waste. So industry specifications are 2% and under. China went to 0.5%. So two big things, the ban of the mixed paper grade, which is a high percentage of the residential stream, and then the restrictions on the specifications.
Why did they decide that they don't like the mixed paper?
They felt as though the mixed paper grade itself was too contaminated. The material coming in didn't even come close to the 2%, and they were being taken advantage of. So as high as 10 or 15%. You know, in this industry, there's a lot of bad actors. We do a lot of audits at our facility. We felt we were meeting the specifications. But this is, you know, processing single stream recycling is an art. It's a manufacturing operation. You have to have a good operator that knows how to run equipment, separate material, understand the quality of products. And I think another initiative was China's very, very far behind us from a recycling infrastructure. So they wanted to build their own system similar to ours. It's almost non-existent there, so they kind of wanted to build up their own recycling infrastructure there.
And with respect to the mixed paper, what do they consider to be a contamination? Meaning food waste or
So
some
I
kind of
have a
ink?
good slide here for you, that the highest contamination items.
Okay.
So if you flip to the next slide, the dilemma, right? This is what's happened the last year and a half. When you have 13 million tons of mixed paper that come out of the United States.
Can I ask, because I didn't mean, I had asked before. So mixed paper, I think that people are thinking, obviously, you're not talking paper like we have here. Are you talking cardboard? Are you talking like pizza?
It's a great question. It's a great question. So if you take single stream itself, the traditional items, what you see in the bin, it's glass, it's cardboard, it's mixed paper, it's aluminum, and it's plastics.
Right.
Right? That mixed paper could be anything that looks like this: newspaper, junk mail, if this was thrown in the bin, that's part of the mixed paper grade. Okay, and it's 40% of the stream. This right here, soda bottle, part of the plastics, 3% of the stream. Okay? Glass by weight, 20%.
Okay, so it's not just paper, it's everything that goes into the whole thing.
No, it's just paper. It's not,
Okay.
so if you take 100% of the pie, if you call it soft, like flexible fiber, right, and it doesn't include cardboard, that's the mixed paper grade.
Okay,
It consists of newspaper, junk mail,
okay.
mostly. To keep it as simple as that. And by weight, so it's very popular, even though newspaper's gone away, right? No, most people don't read a newspaper other than me, probably, but, you know, it's gone to the internet. And, but it's still a major component of
Well,
the
let me
bin.
ask what the contamination, I guess, we've been taught, like, contamination is, you know, for plastic, for not rinsing out like a spaghetti jar properly, or that sort of like black plastic spaghetti jar. So what so when you say, like, this particular paper doesn't look contaminated to me?
That's right, it's not. It's part of the mixed paper grade.
Okay.
And I get some good pictures here that will show you what contamination is. Okay? So just from a value standpoint, when you took 13 million tons that went into China and moved it off to secondary markets that do not have the same appetite as the largest market, export market, as China, it's a simple supply and demand. You've lost the value of the stream itself, mixed paper, 40% of it, which is a large component of it. You've seen the whole value of that grade, the whole value of traditional recycling diminish. Simple supply and demand. And then on top of that, you have to process and make a very good quality end product. So again, two components. That next page where it says commodity changes, This is what the value was 2 years ago of that mixed paper grade. It was $100 2 years ago. Today, it's selling for $4 and in some cases under zero. So it'll give you an idea, when you have the largest portion of the stream that has lost $100, there's hardly any value to the overall stream itself, especially when you throw glass on top of that, of what's happened with the glass. And I have that in that slide. The glass, which is 20% by weight, that went away by the largest bottle redemption facility in the Northeast closes doors March of 2018 also. So at that point, we needed to find a new home for glass. So this is like the perfect storm, is what happened in the spring of 2018. And for 3 months, now mind you, in Massachusetts, mandatory to recycle, and we have 2 facilities there. If we have to landfill any material or go to a burn plant, we need a waiver from the DEP, from the Mass DEP. For 3 months, we had to have a waiver because it was so sudden on the glass that we had landfill glass for just 3 months, and we found a solution for that. So today, glass is made into a road base. The majority of our glass is crushed, made into a road base, kept out of the landfills. Just to be clear, all of our materials, because we're in Massachusetts, we have to find markets for it. It's mandatory. We have to go for, there's no waivers out there. Every one of our materials, cardboard, paper, plastics, all have homes, all have markets, and all goes to either a plastic, metals, or a fiber mill.
Can I ask, what about aluminum? I mean, does aluminum still have value?
Aluminum is one of the few pieces of the puzzle that does have a value now. If you can believe it, it's lost a little bit of value over the last 2 years, and that is because of the tariff war, right? The 25%, it used to be, you see very little exporting of aluminum now. It's lost a little bit of value. It's caused everything to stay domestically, which has kind of oversupplied the aluminum mills here in the U.S., but it's still, it's the smallest percentage of the stream. In New Hampshire, it's 2% of the stream. In Massachusetts, it's 1%, obviously because of bottle bill. But it does have value. It's the highest value in the stream, the lowest percentage. Next slide where it says impacts to MRFs. Because again, this happened so quickly. Increase to our processing costs because we had to make a 0.5% quality. We had to add labor. Again, manufacturing plants, we slow down lines. Sure.
What's MRF?
And I'm sorry, I should have clarified that. We use a lot of acronyms in our industry. MRF stands for a Material Recovery Facility.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So again, we had to add labor, slow down the lines, and in a lot of cases, and we're still doing, we had to reinvest into the facilities. These are capital intensive facilities. And we are now reinvesting in these facilities. Just alone in 2019, we're investing almost $10 million into each one of the 17 facilities. The Boston and the Auburn, Mass facility investing over $6 million each just this year, right? To increase, staying with technology, updating technology, and producing a higher quality. So you see, dealing with contamination, we'll get to that contamination slide. And I did mention the transfer costs, right? That's added on to the processing costs. One thing that's really, really important is over the past years, commodity values, those traditional commodity values of cardboard, paper, plastics, aluminum, they've ebbed and flowed. And most of the time, they've been high enough to cover the cost of processing and the cost of picking it up at the curb. Now, because over the last 2 years, that value has gone away, that's why you see the cost of recycling. Those costs are still there. So really, in short, for lack of a better phrase, recycling was never free, right? There was always that cost of processing and hauling it. It's just the value of recyclables were higher than that over the past 20 years. And so what's happened is New Hampshire now has those transfer costs that are on top of the processing costs that you see. So the contamination in the stream, pictures are worth 1,000 words. Those are the highest contamination items that you see in the stream. Plastic bags, fantastic, great, send them back to the grocery store by itself. If it's thrown into the bin, it's really poison to us because it will not be captured, it's dirty, ends up into our recycling equipment, jams our equipment, and I'll tell you, it's still one of the highest contamination. We stop every 4 hours and we have to clean out our equipment during break time and whatnot, so it's definitely a problematic item. The tanglers that you see there, those are problematic ropes, electrical cords, clothing, textiles, we see a lot of that. And then you have the food waste. The pizza box is okay. Food in the pizza box is not okay, so that's a contamination. The second item that you see is one of the most dangerous one, and that's the lithium batteries. They are very, very dangerous from a fire standpoint. If they end up on the tip floor and one of our rolling stock or a loader or a forklift rolls over it, there's been whole facilities that have been lost. We've had, we track the fires that we have at our facilities, that anywhere from a flammable smoke to high flame. We had 40 last year, and 20 of them go back to lithium batteries. So if there's any, and that's another level, just because from a safety standpoint, we want our employees to go home safe. The next slide, back to the basics, and that's really what we're trying to encourage here, right? We have our own program that's called Recycle Better on our website, and it really just kind of talks about going back to the cardboard, the tubs and the lids, any, metals, and keeping it simple. We went away from the numbers on the bottom of plastics, just to kind of clarify what we're looking in the bin. We today the motto is, if you're unsure if it goes in the bin, well, it probably doesn't go in the bin. I would just throw it in the trash. That's why it's so important there's a big focus on contamination that's coming in to the plants and at the curb, just because of the purity aspect that's happened with overseas, and it's had a rippling effect domestically. The next slide, new fiber capacity, right? One dilemma, right, is another opportunity. The dilemma was China shut its doors. The opportunity is this little map here that you see of fiber infrastructure that's being built from a mill standpoint. It's over 5 million tons that is being built over the next 2 years to bring that mixed paper grade back home, and it's great. It's going to create capacity. We hope that it drives price, right? More demand drives price, but it's not going to happen overnight. It takes these are very large investments, anywhere from 100 million to 500 million, and you're looking at probably anywhere from 18 to 36 months before this is completed. Locally for us, there's a mill that's being retrofitted in Rumford, Maine, and there's a mill that's being built in Albany, New York. So you have a lot of capacity. That's 1 million tons for the Northeast, and hopefully over the next 24 months, you'll see most of that mixed paper grade being sent to those mills. So really, the last slide, the Casella perspective is, consumers still want to recycle. Our volumes are there. They haven't gone away. We're still, over 200,000 tons in our biggest plant. We just talked about the domestic mill that's being built, hopefully over the next 2 years. We continue and invest at our facilities. John and Doug, the brothers, John's still the CEO of Casella. They started in a recycling truck. They know it's part of our core business. They're committed to it, and they'll continue to invest. Recycle smarter, recycle better. We feel as though as we get that education out there, we reduce the contamination. Just to throw it in perspective, of the material that comes in, there's an average of 15 to 20% contamination. So that means 1 of every 5 items that's thrown in that bucket doesn't belong there. So that's why there's a big focus on contamination, right? The cleaner the material, easier it is for us to process, the better the quality of product that comes out the back door. And again, I can't say enough. I mean, there's a big fallacy out there that recyclables are being landfilled or thrown into a burn. That's not the case. I can tell you that we have found markets for everyone. The value has gone away of these materials, there's no doubt about it. There's very few valuable materials. Plastics, value, but it's only 10% of the stream. Aluminum, value, but it's only 2% of the stream. So you're looking at anywhere from 80 to 85% of the stream has lost its value. They still have markets. So it's very important. Folks still want to do the right thing. They want to recycle. But again, value has gone away, but we're still finding markets, and we will continue to find markets.
I thought on your slide that has what's acceptable, under the plastic stuff, I didn't think that you were supposed to keep the caps on.
Caps are fine. That's another fallacy. Caps are fine.
That nagging for nothing, all right.
Right. The top of a cap over the past 5 to 7 years is a plastic resin. It may be a different resin than the bottle itself, but through the process, it's captured, it floats up, and it's a different resin, but it's captured and recycled.
Huh, all right.
Going to the markets, I'm looking at the slide, the dilemma slide, so China is no longer a market, but it suggests smaller Asian countries, India, Korea, Indonesia may be markets. How much of the waste stream is shipped to those smaller countries, and how much confidence is there that when you ship something to Indonesia, as an example, it's actually going there? And
it's being handled properly, and it's not ending up.
Yeah, because, we see these
Right.
films of the oceans with just, seas of garbage.
Right.
How do we know that?
Right.
How do we know that stuff that gets on a barge to go to Indonesia actually gets to Indonesia?
Yeah. So to answer the first question, you had 13 million tons that were diverted. Half of them went to the smaller Indonesia secondary market export. A lot of it came back home also to domestically. So, and that's mostly the mixed paper grade, right? And we know that there's paper mills out there. We sell to reputable brokers. We've been out there. We know it's handled the same way that it's handled in the United States. What you're referring to is the plastic grade, right? You hear a lot about marine pollution, plastics in the ocean. We've been called to the carpet. Every one of our plastics from a residential standpoint, anything that you throw in the bucket from a plastics is sold domestically. We will not take the chance of it ending up in the ocean somewhere.
But are you handling all of your materials domestically, or is some of your material being shipped to these? I mean, I'm not picking on Indonesia, I'm just using it as.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Is part of the waste stream being shipped to the smaller Asian countries?
So part of the recyclables, and it's mostly that mixed paper grade, is being sold to India and Korea and Taiwan. Yes, part of that. But all of the plastic side of the bin, the stream, is sold domestically. None of our plastics go overseas.
So do you have confidence that the mixed paper stream, which is?
I do.
Going, and
I
what
do.
how is it delivered there? Is it a ship or?
Yeah, so we're fortunate enough that our Boston facility is 10 minutes from the pier in the city of Boston. So it's put into a 40-foot container. Usually weighs about 52,000 pounds net. The whole container is 100,000 pounds. Thrown on a barge and shipped overseas. It typically takes 6 weeks to get over there. And to kind of put that in perspective from a contaminate, when you ship a container overseas and they open the doors and they see contamination, they close the doors and reject it and they send it back to us. One container, if it's sent back to us, costs us $10,000. And we don't just ship one container, we ship 20 at a time, 50 at a time. So that's why it's so important that what we produce on the end of our line is purity, and that's why it's important what comes into the facility. That's why the big focus on contamination.
Right.
Sure.
Commissioner Moriarty.
Thank you. So you mentioned, I'm just trying to get my numbers down here. You said the mixed paper is 40%, glass is 20, plastic is 10, aluminum is 2, so that's 72 percent, what's the other percentage?
So you got plastics at 10%.
Yep.
You have 2% of the whole plastics at 10%, right? And then
You
we have
said
aluminum at
plastics
2%. You have ferrous, tin, bimetals, a can.
Metal's about 10%?
It's about 4%. Corrugated cardboard, that's another 18%,
Okay,
about 18 to 20%.
okay.
And then whatever you have left over, it varies from plant to plant, is contamination.
Another
Yes.
question I have, so we're all in favor of recycling, but we're also in favor of reducing the cost to the city, which is costing quite a bit of money. How would you suggest that we could reduce what's costing the city? What is the best way for the city to reduce the cost?
Yeah. So two ways. I would say the focus on contamination and making sure the cleanest stream that comes into the transfer station in the city. We're putting a program together. The cleaner the material, the better the price. We can't run from what it costs to recycle, right? Again, we knew the value was up, and they'll hide those processing costs. As long as the value of recyclables are not very high, you're always going to see that processing and hauling costs exceed that, so there's going to be costs associated with it. But my biggest recommendation to the state last week was some type of recycling infrastructure in the state itself, a facility that processes. You're one of the few states in the country that does not have a single stream processing facility. 80% of all the programs in the United States are on a single stream curbside program now. And the reason I say that is, again, it costs anywhere from $15 to $30 a ton to transfer material from New Hampshire by truck. That's how it goes. We throw it in a truck and it goes into one of our facilities. Mostly it's down to Boston, out of the city here. And if you eliminate those costs, that's a reduction, and it's the difference between being less than a landfill cost and being over from a landfill cost. So that would be my biggest recommendation. It's well overdue here. We handle 30,000 tons. We have facilities that are by itself that processes 35,000 tons a year. So just out of New Hampshire ourselves, and there's other volume that we know that's out there the state handles, probably another 30,000 tons with other vendors that the state handles.
So you obviously handle recycling from a lot of different communities. Are you able to say how the purity or the contamination, whichever side of it you want to?
That's a great question.
From each community?
We do. So we have 17 facilities. Every one of our facilities over the past 6 months has introduced what we call an audit team. It could be anywhere. In our Boston, Murph, we have a team of 4 people, and all they do all day is take samples of each customer that comes in and take 400-pound samples, and we go through it, and we estimate, we have exact data of what the percentage of contamination is in that particular load that comes in. So not only do we do it by community, we can do it by truck.
And do you have a sense of how Nashua compares with the other communities and what our level of contamination?
That's a great question. We have that data. We're going to have to, I can get you that data, absolutely.
We haven't had any loads refused yet, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, my sense is, I typically, everything, the ones that are bad are usually flagged to me. And I have never seen Nashua flagged to me. So my gut is you're at average or well below average, so it's probably a clean stream. Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Alderman Jettie.
So, but the transportation cost, you said it's by the ton, it's by weight?
Correct.
I was up north and last month, and in the facility up there, they had a compactor, and all their plastics went into this compactor, and they compacted it. If we compacted it and reduced the volume, wouldn't change the weight, but we reduced the volume, would we be able to get costs, would be able to reduce the transportation costs?
But actually, you would reduce the cost by increasing the weight. So if you, I believe the loads that come out of Nashua now are anywhere from 15 to 17 ton per load. If you had a compactor, you would probably increase that to 21 to 22 ton per load, which would mean less trips and less costs. So if you install the compactor, it would be very beneficial from a transportation standpoint. Of course, there may be a little bit of investment involved. You would need a large compactor, and you would need special trailers that would go with that compactor, because they have to be enclosed. They wouldn't be the typical over-the-top, what we call walking floor trailers. They'd be compaction trailers.
And would the plastics have to be separated from the paper?
No.
No?
It would be the same, just similar as how it's handled right now.
Could I just...
Yeah.
Sure.
So can you, there's been a lot of concern with all the publicity about, as the mayor has pointed out, people have told me that they've stopped recycling because they're afraid that we're paying more to ship the recycling down to you, and their fear is that you're just putting that recycling into somebody else's landfill, or dumping it in the ocean or whatever. So can you assure our taxpayers that that is not happening through your facility, that whatever they recycle is actually going to be recycled?
We cannot throw it in a landfill without a waiver from our Mass DEP. Again, very different than New Hampshire. Massachusetts, it's mandatory to recycle. And we're held to standards at our facility that ensure that we have markets in there, and it's recycled, reused, repurposed, recycled. If it is not, we have to go to the state and say, hey, I don't have a market for this. Can you give me a waiver? That's not the case today. That's the best I can do is ensure, and it's as good as any, other than we invite folks in all the time from an education standpoint, where every one of our facility has an education room. We would encourage any kind of tours or whatnot, and it's very eye-opening. Most folks walk out, and I've never seen anything like that, so.
Thank you.
Commissioner Tees.
Following on Alderman Jetty's question, loads that are contaminated, that come back, you gotta get a waiver for those because there's no place to put them? What happens?
The loads that come back from overseas is what you're referring to, that are very costly. So those loads come back, they end up at our facility, we have to reprocess them. We'll break the bales and run them through the line again.
Got it.
We don't have many loads that, believe me, we don't have many loads that, that are rejected. No, we don't have any, and believe me, I'd be on top of it. It's not a pretty sight, and it's very costly.
Commissioner Moriarty.
Yeah, so once again, you said the glass is 20% of the stream, but it's also probably the heaviest by weight, and so that's costing the city a lot of money because it's weight by ton. So I suggested at one of our meetings that maybe we should just eliminate collecting glass at the, curbside, that may not be that easy because we're single stream now, but I was just wondering your thoughts. Are you making now, did you say you're making money on the glass because you're grinding it and selling it to companies for roads?
It's going out at a cost that's less than a landfill. There's still a cost associated with us grinding it and then selling it to a road, not selling it, but it's moving at a cost to, from a road-based standpoint, to make road base. My suggestion with glass, it's a very difficult item. It's very abrasive. It's extracted at the beginning of our system, but it's still hard on our equipment, and it's never had much value to it as long as I've been in this industry, whether you separate it or it's by mix broken. I believe it's an item that has more markets collected by itself, and just because the cleaning the material, like anything, cleaning the material, you could probably move it to maybe a bottle-to-bottle site or something of that sort, right? It shouldn't be in the bin. It's just, but you can't. You're not going to be able to get away with it, right? It's 20% of the stream. Maine has an extended bottle bill. that they have on wine and spirits, it's half of that. Glass in that stream is 10% up in Maine. But you still have a percentage of it. We're still going to have to handle a percentage of it. It seems as though you'll never be able to extract all of it. To reduce it, you may be able to.
Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, well, I don't see any other questions.
Yeah.
but,
Thanks for
thank
having
you
me.
very much.
Any question, if anybody would want
Very
a
enlightening.
tour of our facility, be happy. Most everyone has my card, so thanks again for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right,
Mayor, I have to go to a different meeting.
okay. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Parks and Recreation.
Move to approve the purchase and installation of playground servicing for the Jeff Moran Fields at Roby Park Playground from Green Inc. LLC, DBA IntelliTurf, New England of Boston, Mass. for the sum of $109,790. Funding will be through Department 177 Park and Recreation Fund Grant Activity, NHCF, Jeff Moran Memorial Funds and Fund General, account classification 55 other services.
Discussion? Commissioner Ackerman.
Thank you. Most likely a question for the superintendent when he gets up to the podium, but I did notice that on the quote from the IntelliTurf dated 9/19/2019 in our packet, and it really does look like you've done your due diligence. Thank you very much. Just a quick question. Does that last bullet on page 58 of the quote, where it says IntelliTurf to assume no responsibility for collateral damage to walkways, concern you in any way? Or is there just, is damage to walkways a byproduct of this installation?
No, Nick Caggiano, Parks and Rec. What they're going to be doing is putting in nailer boards around the perimeter of the walkway. So whenever you do some kind of a attachment, there might be some chipping. The walkway at the park is original. It was put in 2002, and we're probably going to arrange to have a top coat done next year, if at all possible. It's a very small area. I'm not concerned.
All right, fair enough. Thank you.
Anything else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Solid Waste.
Move to approve a change order to the contract with SCS Field Services of Reston, Virginia in the amount of $135,140, pending bond approval. Funding will be through Department 168 Solid Waste Fund Bond Activity Landfill Gas Expansion FY20.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Mr. LaFleur looks disappointed that we didn't get a lot of questions. Wastewater?
Make a motion to approve the user warrants as presented.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item B.
I move to approve the contract for the digester gas holding tank upgrade project with Methuen Construction Company of Plastow, New Hampshire, in an amount not to exceed $311,507. Funding will be through Department 169 Wastewater Fund Wastewater Activity Digester Gas Holding Tank Upgrade Project.
Maybe we'll have Mr. Roder do the explanation.
Thank you. Dave Boucher, Superintendent
Boucher,
Wastewater.
Mr. Boucher, I'm sorry.
So this project is for a gas holding tank located at the wastewater plant. It has a diaphragm inside the tank. That's life expectancy is between 10 and 20 years. So we had it inspected. The tank has a tear in it. So the diaphragm, not the tank, but the diaphragm has a tear in it. So the diaphragm has to be replaced. And we looked at different options. There's not many of these tanks around. So we have to have a diaphragm made for it. And this company will come in, replace the diaphragm, and also modify the bracket that holds the diaphragm in place, because The company that designed the tank actually has a new design to make it easier for the future replacements. So that's what this motion will cover. The cost of the diaphragm and to remove the old diaphragm and put in the new one and make the modifications.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Item C.
I move to approve change order number 2 to the energy recovery upgrade contract with Methuen Construction Company, Class New Hampshire, in an amount not to exceed $21,181.16 for new lighting and painting in the energy recovery room. Funding will be through Department 169 wastewater fund, the activity energy recovery upgrade project.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much. Street Department?
I'll move to approve the purchase of winter road salt from Granite State Minerals of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and Eastern Materials, Inc. of Chelsea, Mass. for the amount of $455,000, funding through the Department 161 Streets Fund, General Account Classification 61 Supplies and Materials.
And of course, this is Mr. Ibarra. What about the brining? How successful do you think that's been? And is that reducing the amount of salt we use on an annual basis?
So the brining is 100% operational now, and we have all our liquid applicators installed in the trucks and roughly calibrated. We'll have a little fine tuning to do as the season gets going. Our pre-wet systems are all installed. We have 9,000 gallons on hand, and we didn't run it enough last year to do the numbers to see how much we saved, but we did have positive results with the product itself. We're geared up to actually track it this year, so we're anticipating a good cost savings.
And when you say positive results with the brining itself, meaning the streets where brine is applied are clearer?
Yes, we reduced the hard pack, we got quicker pavement conditions, so, yeah, we had positive results in that aspect.
Good. Yes, Commissioner Pappas.
Do you think we're through the learning curve? I know it takes a while to adjust that.
The guys are grabbing the bulls by the horns, so to speak. The machine is very user-friendly,
Okay.
and, yeah, we've got it.
'Cause I don't
As
think-
far as maybe mixing blending agents with it, additives, we'll have to experiment with that aspect, but the brine itself, we're good to go.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Ackerman.
To the mayor's point, and assuming we get 100% improvement through brining, is there any way to reduce the cost allocated to the salt appropriation of $455,000 to save the taxpayers money?
Depending on the season, yes, they predict a 30% cost savings. So I threw together some numbers, just did some figuring. So it'll take a ton of salt at roughly 2.2 pounds per gallon to make 909 gallons of brine, which applied at 40 gallons a mile, which is the recommended 40 to 50. I figured it at 40. We can do about 22 miles of road. With rock salt at that same tonnage, at a 300-pound mile application, we can do 6.67 miles with that same ton. So yes, I anticipate a dramatic cost savings.
Now, that would be a lot more than 30%, 30% going.
That's about a third of the cost.
Well, maybe I didn't catch the figures correctly, but I think you said that with the brining, you're doing 40 to 50 miles per ton?
No. 40 to 50 gallons application per lane mile.
Oh, okay. All right.
And those, I'm trying to reserve the numbers. I want to see how it actually goes, but that's what we're predicting.
If I recall, through the quote, through the motion, this is about the same amount of money that we've appropriated for the last 4 consecutive years. Is that?
I actually held back $10,000 out of my budget so we could look at some of those blending agents and investing in that. We have the tank farm capacity to do that.
So based upon what we know right now in the brining and how possibly successful it's going to be, depending upon the intensity of the winter, do you see any way to lower the appropriation of this motion of $455,000?
Time will tell. Yes, it's projected to save us money, yes. To answer your question, what that number will be, I don't yet know.
So if we approve this motion, then it just allocates that amount of money, but as you move through the year, you don't necessarily spend this? Is that, am I understanding what you're saying?
Potentially, depending on the season.
Just to be clear, though, that won't negate our need for salt. I mean, we will still need to use salt during an event. So this is our first year really using brine, so we really want to get a sense of how much it will reduce. But certainly, we won't purchase the salt if we don't need it. Hopefully, that's the case.
That's what I wanted to hear.
Yes.
How big a load, when you order salt, how much do you bring in at one time?
It varies. It's about 30 ton on a trailer, and we order 10 to 15 trailers at a time.
And a ton costs how much?
$49.50 a ton. That's a state bid. So it's the best price.
So you have quite a few deliveries during the course of the
Yeah,
season.
that budget will put about 9,200 ton in the barn.
Any other discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Engineering.
I'll move to approve residential and commercial wastewater service permits and fees as submitted.
Mr. Dukern is going to be here to answer any questions. The motion is on the permits and fees. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
I'll move to approve a contract for the 2019 pipeline assessment project with Ted Berry Company LLC of Livermore, Maine, in an amount not to exceed $154,600. Funding will be the Department 169 wastewater fund bond activity, sewer rehab.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item C.
I move to approve the following poll license
Wait,
petitions.
can I
as
interrupt?
printed.
Yeah, good. I was going to say, we'll be here until 9 o'clock as we read through those. All right. Thank you very much, Commissioner T. So the motion is to approve as printed. Commissioner Pappas.
I had in my notes, just from the last time we had poll petitions, I had asked about, I know that you don't have a whole lot of control over where they place the polls, but if there's something that people deem as a real public safety hazard, that they might look into it. On Tinker Road, there are two of them right, if you're heading towards Pennachuck, so that would be going on Tinker Road south towards Pennachuck. On the right-hand side of the road after White Oak, there are two poles that are really close to the road. And when you're sitting on the passenger side and you're teaching kids how to drive, I mean, you really do realize how close those are, but someone mentioned that to me a couple of times.
Okay.
So, I know, I mean, to me, I don't know, I know that that's not something you have control over, but if we're granting these pole licenses, I think that those two poles really need to be moved back.
I believe, I remember you requesting that, and I think we did make the request, and we'll certainly do that again.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, absolutely.
Commissioner Ackerman.
So I realize the polls are coded, all the different numbers, PSNH. PSNH is kind of like contract website. Are these not really maintained by Eversource?
Yes, they are. Steve Dupin, city engineer, for another day. They still have the old numbering system. If you look at the pole, you'll see a PSNH number. And so the poles, just to let you know, the poles in the city are owned both by Eversource and by Fairpoint, which is now consolidated. North of the river, the National River, consolidated and south are Eversources. But the old numbering system is still maintained.
All right. Anything else? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item D.
Move to approve a change order for the Monica Drive Drainage Improvements Project with the RWC Enterprises of Nashua for the amount not to exceed $42,980. Funding will be through Department 161 Wastewater Fund Bond Activity Sewer Rehab.
Discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Now, before Mr. Dukran departs or steps down from the podium, I would like to invite him up to the stage here.
Oh, great.
We do have a plaque, which we are presenting to Mr. Dukran for all of his years of service to the Board of Public Works. So this reads, presented to Steve Dukran, City Engineer, 20 years of service, 1998 to 2019. In recognition and appreciation of your leadership, dedication, and hard work for the City of Nashua Public Works Division, and for tirelessly advocating for the importance of building and maintaining infrastructure that will last for many generations of future Nashua residents. We're presenting this to you today on behalf of the Board of Public Works members, myself, Commissioner Ackerman, Commissioner Pappas, Commissioner Moriarty, and Commissioner Tees. So, thank you very much.
Speech?
I've given up for those for the last 2 days, but I'll just make it quick. I appreciate the honor. I don't deserve it as much as others. But, I go back a while, as mentioned, and I've worked with many more board members, this board, as well as the Board of Aldermen, and several mayors. And I appreciate all the support they've given me, especially the opportunity to have worked this way and advance good projects and deliver good projects and make the residents better off in the city. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair, I need to get to
That's fine.
I'm going to be his ride home.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor, but I don't know, but before, I don't know if Mr. Dukran's leaving now or not.
He is.
Yeah.
Yes.
I actually wrote a little something up. Just that I have tremendous respect for Engineer Dukran, and I hope he doesn't take it insult to this. Engineering isn't the most exciting, riveting, or to many of us, an interesting study, but it is certainly very necessary. My darkest time on the board was the period after a young man lost his life when we had a water receptacle open. Steve Dukran was there and answered a very unpleasant call to duty. Many would have been unable or unwilling to answer this call, but Steve was not. For the record, I don't see Steve as a dinosaur. I see Steve as a rare employee who understands who he serves. He understands he serves the citizens of Nashua. He does answer to the mayor, the director, and to this board, but he serves the people. I hope all employees can remember that. We should not want to surround ourselves with folks who tell us only what we want to hear rather than what we need to hear. He's got an outstanding work ethic and integrity. He will always tell the truth. And again, it is very important to be told what you want to hear rather than what you need to hear. And I don't think anyone could ever accuse him of being a yes man. I recall, it was fairly early on in my tenure, I happened to be walking out of the parking lot the same time as Mr. Dukran did. And I have, I don't know if you call it a liberal or more conservative view of development, and that I really like to see us limit our development. And I had watched a meeting, and I said, I think you might be too loose about development. I said, I think you're kind of, too much for it. And he said, I'm for responsible development. And I never forgot that, because I'm sure there have been times, through, what has it been, three or four mayors? Yeah, through 4 mayors, and you're serving on the planning board. That could not have been easy, and it's a lot of late nights on those. The planning board, I don't know how people even stay awake for those meetings. They're long and they last late, and I, certainly, I'm sure I speak for everyone that we really appreciate your service, Steve. Thank you so much.
I just want to, are we going to say?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I probably spoke and said more than I should have yesterday, but I'm tired tonight, so I'm have to get emotional, so I'm going to keep it short and sweet. But, Public Works tends to be a very thankless job, and we really don't get recognized oftentimes until something goes wrong. We don't get recognized for all the great things that we do. And I agree with you, Commissioner Pappas. Steve Dukran is an example of a lot of the good that has happened in Public Works. We're a tight-knit group. These folks that are sitting here, we all work really closely together. And we attack the day in infrastructure here in Nashua with a lot of energy and a lot of pride, and we feel good about being able to touch every taxpayer's life every day. And Steve just exemplifies, incredible dedication and hard work in our community. Projects like the Broad Street Parkway, the Main Street Sidewalk Project, the skate park, the paving program, he's just worked tirelessly, and that's just to name a few. I mean, he's worked tirelessly on so many projects and trying to promote the importance of our infrastructure, and he's very humble about it. He always says, I don't deserve the accolades. Well, he does deserve the accolades, and his impact on this community will be long-standing. I mean, and I appreciate it, and I'm sorry to see him go, and it's a sad time for all of us, because we are a tight-knit group, and Steve, we're going to miss so much your knowledge, your expertise, your determination, your leadership, and your commitment, and I hope that you're not a stranger, because we're going to really miss you as part of our team. So thank you. See, I did it without getting emotional.
Now, we're going to move on to the director's report, but Commissioner Tease had to leave because of a meeting conflict. I just want people to realize he had another issue. He left his umbrella behind,
Yes, we
so
gotta grab
someone
that.
should pick that up. He just texted me.
I hope he's not getting wet right now.
So do we have a director's report?
Yes. And you all don't need to stay for this, but thank you for. Okay. This is a picture of a handicap ramp installation that was installed on Lowell Street. This is the reclaiming, regrading of Mulberry Street. Steve Dukran, of course, is retiring as of tomorrow. I'm not going to say anything more about that. I already did. The Nashua River fountains, hopefully you've seen them. They were installed on the Nashua River on the 27th. And this was kind of a joint effort between Public Works and Community Development. The Fussell Court, located on Ash Street, was put into play at a ceremony on September 14th. The field at Stellas was groomed on September 4th. This grooming was done after an impact report showed that there were some areas that needed to be addressed, so we got those areas fixed.
Where is that?
This is Stellas,
Okay.
our turf field at Stellas.
Okay.
There's a community cleanup, the Revive Recover Center, led by volunteer coordinator Priscilla Matos, I believe, cleaned up the riverbank from the Main Street Bridge to the Broad Street Parkway. Thank you so much for your efforts. There was some emergency tree work done. There were some limbs on Revere Street that needed immediate attention. Our crews responded on September 5th. Picture on the left is our surveyor, Mark Jennings, laying out the design for the new playground equipment at the park. And we have the shade sails for the Jeff Moore Playground. Now we're just waiting for the footings, and we'll be installing the poles and the shade canopy soon. So that'll be a really nice addition. We had our Wheels and Wings event on September 14th. We had over 3,500 people attend, so it was a very successful event. Thank you to Jeff DeSalvo and Kelly DeSimone for all their help in producing that event. It's a big event. Greeley Park on September 14th hosted Project Water Walk, which is a community fundraising project to improve water quality in communities in Africa. This is just a picture of some of our fleet crews at work. The left mechanic is repairing a trash truck. The center photo is a Parks paint gun being repaired, and the third slide is a Parks mower being repaired. Our street crews are continuing to install the wayfinding sign package. You probably have noticed all the new signs popping up all over the city. This is a drainage project on Gilson Road prior to paving. We installed a catch basin also to improve drainage in that area. Street crews repaired a collapsed sewer service at 26 Blossom Street. Here's another example of a catch basin replacement on 43 Monica Drive. Street crews chipped cleared some brush growing around the city-owned building at Gilson Road. Another example of catch basin repair at 4 Howard Street, where a catch basin had failed and it created a sinkhole. Here, this is a resident thank you for Foreman Scott Law and his crew at the wastewater treatment plant for their work at 6 Glendale, helping a resident with a culvert cleanup. And here is an example of the service replacement on East Glenwood. They worked, the street department and wastewater worked together to find a manhole that was 2.5 feet deep. This was replaced so that we have better access in the future and aren't having to dig down 2.5 feet for it. This is a picture of 2 rooftop radiators for the energy recovery project that was delivered to the wastewater treatment plant this month. The radiators are for the 2 large CAT recovery generators that will be installed very soon. We did some smoke testing in our sewers on Marshall Street, and we were very pleased to see that we did not have any issues, and the smoke came out of all the areas it was supposed to. So, and we did notify the residents before we did this, of course, so they were aware.
complaints?
No, we did not. We did notify them, though. We sent a nice letter to all the residents, so they
You
knew
just test
what
if
we were
you
doing.
assume, if you think there might be a problem?
Smoke testing is done to determine if there are any problems with any of the lines.
Okay.
We found out we didn't have any issues, which is really good news. This is collections crews that are cleaning the National Street Pump Station. We have 13 pump stations throughout the city that we own and maintain, and they all need periodic cleaning, and this is just an example of cleaning the National Street Pump Station. You all, I think you all saw the Phase 3 landfill when we had our tour, and this is just a couple of other pictures of it. So our second to last household hazardous waste collection will be held on Saturday, October 5th at the street department garage from 8 to 12. And we only have one more after that on November 2nd. So hopefully folks will take advantage of that. Our curbside collection of oversized items will be ending for the season. The last date to request a pickup is October 25th, and collections will end on Friday, November 1st. So get those last pickups in if you need them. And this is important because this could confuse people. City Hall is open on Columbus Day. However, the Forest Hills Landfill and Recycling Center will be closed on Monday, October 14th for Columbus Day. So, and all curbside collections will be delayed a day that week. So, and the reason we do this is because of the Thanksgiving holiday. These folks work
Right,
the day
yeah.
after Thanksgiving, so. Any questions?
Very good.
Commissioner Ackerman.
I do have a question, because your picture of the landfill just reminded me of something that I wanted to just
Sure.
revisit as part of our agenda. On the wonderful activities going on at Roby Park, and in the quote, it makes a mention that the city's going to help with removing approximately 200 cubic yards of wood chips. Do we plan to put that in the landfill, or potentially recycle that somewhere else, or repurpose it somewhere else?
You know, I really am not sure what the plan is, but I could look into that and let you know. There's a number of things that could be done with it.
I was just
Yeah.
thinking, save airspace, thank you.
Yes. It can be used as cover. We also have vendors that will take that material for free. I think that the superintendent may want to reuse some of it too, so it's probably a combination of all those things. Yeah.
We're on to commissioners' comments. Any comments from the commissioners? Personnel, item A.
I move to accept the retirement of Steve Dukran, city engineer, effective September 27, 2019.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item B.
I move to approve and unseal the non-public minutes for personnel from the Board of Public Works meeting, August 15th, 2019.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes. Item C.
I'll move to approve and unseal the non-public minutes from personnel from the Board of Public Works meeting of August 22nd.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. We now have a non-public session. Is there a motion regarding that?
I move by roll call that the board go into non-public session pursuant to RSA 91A3, Section 2B, the hiring of any person as a public employee.
Could you, Diane, please call the roll?
Mayor Donchis?
Yes.
Commissioner Ackerman?
Yes.
Commissioner Pappas?
Yes.
Commissioner Moriarty?
Yes.
All right, we will now enter non-public session.